Commander HFY stood 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. His thick shell could stop bullets, and his claws could tear through steel like paper. He had won battles on 63 different worlds. Every alien species in the galaxy feared the Zephyrians and their incredible strength, but humans confused him completely. 5 years ago, when humans first joined the Galactic Council, HFY expected them to be like all the others. Most new species tried to act tough around Zephyrians. They would puff up their bodies, make loud noises, or show off their weapons. Some even challenged Zephyrian warriors to fights, thinking they could prove themselves. Humans did none of these things. Instead, they did something very strange. Whenever humans entered a room, got on a transport ship, or joined a meeting, they always went to the back. Always. Not sometimes, not when they felt like it, but every single time. HFY first noticed this during military training exercises. The Galactic Council required all member species to work together, so different alien armies practiced side by side. When boarding transport ships, Zephyrian warriors naturally took the front seats. They were the strongest, so they deserved the best spots. Other aliens fought and pushed to sit close to the front too. Everyone wanted to be near the exits, have the best view, and show their importance. But humans. They walked past all the empty front seats and sat in the back rows. Even their leaders did this. Admiral Sarah Chen, who commanded the entire human space fleet, would choose a back seat even when front seats were empty. Colonel Marcus Webb, their top ground forces commander, did the same thing. At first, HFY thought humans were just being polite. Maybe they wanted to show respect to stronger species. But after watching them for months, he realized something odd. The humans did not look scared or nervous when they sat in the back. They did not act like they were giving up the good seats because they had to. They looked comfortable, like sitting in the back was exactly where they wanted to be. This bothered HFY more than he wanted to admit. In Zephyrian culture, strong warriors took the front positions. It showed courage and power. Weak creatures stayed in the back where they would be safer but less important. For thousands of years, this had been the natural order of things. Other Zephyrian officers noticed the human behavior too. They started making jokes about it. "Look at the humans hiding in the back again," they would say. "They know their place." Some Zephyrians felt proud that humans showed them proper respect by not competing for front seats. But HFY was not so sure. He had fought many different alien species, and he knew how to read body language. Scared aliens moved differently than confident ones. Weak species acted differently than strong ones. When he watched humans carefully, their body language did not match their seating choices. Humans in the back seats sat up straight. Their eyes moved constantly, looking around the room or ship. They positioned themselves where they could see everything and everyone. They did not huddle together like frightened creatures. Instead, they spread out and seemed to be watching. Dr. Kexlar, the Zephyrian chief scientist, decided to study human behavior more closely. She thought maybe humans had religious reasons for sitting in the back. Or perhaps their home planet had taught them to avoid conflicts by staying out of the way. Dr. Kexlar spent months collecting data. She recorded thousands of hours of humans in different situations. Meeting rooms, dining halls, transport ships, theaters, shopping areas. Everywhere humans went, they chose positions in the back or along the sides. Never in the center, almost never in the front. It must be a survival instinct, Dr. Kexlar told HFY during one of their discussions. Their species probably evolved as prey animals. Staying in the back keeps them safe from predators. HFY nodded, but something still felt wrong about this explanation. He had seen humans fight during the few small conflicts that happened in their region of space. Human soldiers did not fight like prey animals. They moved with purpose and coordination. They made smart decisions under pressure. They protected other species, even stronger ones, when danger appeared. How could a prey species act like protectors? The mystery deepened during joint training exercises. When different alien armies practiced together, most species wanted to show off their best abilities. Zephyrians demonstrated their strength by lifting heavy objects and breaking through barriers. The crystalline hegemony showed off their advanced energy weapons. The methane breathers displayed their ability to survive in any environment. Humans did not show off at all. They participated in all the exercises, but they never tried to prove they were the best at anything. During combat simulations, they worked well with other species, but did not try to take command. During strength tests, they did their best but did not seem upset when stronger species performed better. This quiet behavior made other aliens think humans were weak or unambitious. But HFY noticed something else. During complex exercises that required multiple species to work together, things went more smoothly when humans were involved. Somehow, mixed groups with humans made fewer mistakes and completed missions faster. HFY could not figure out why this happened. Humans did not give orders to other species. They did not push themselves forward as leaders. They just participated. But their participation seemed to make everything work better. The most puzzling thing happened during emergency drills. When alarms sounded and everyone had to evacuate quickly, most species rushed toward the exits. Stronger aliens pushed past weaker ones. Panic often made the situation worse as different species got in each other's way. But in sections where humans were present, evacuations went much smoother. Humans did not push or rush. Instead, they seemed to guide traffic flow without anyone noticing. They helped other species find exits, cleared paths for larger aliens, and somehow kept panic from spreading. Again, they did this from back positions. They did not stand at the front directing everyone. They stayed toward the rear and sides, but their influence made the whole process work better. HFY began to suspect that human behavior was not random or cultural. It seemed planned. But planned for what? One day he decided to ask directly. During a break in training exercises, he approached Admiral Chen. She was sitting in her usual spot in the back of the recreation area, drinking something humans called coffee. "Admiral Chen," HFY said, "may I ask you a question about human customs?" "Of course, Commander," she replied with a smile. "What would you like to know? Why do humans always choose seats in the back? Other species prefer front positions, but your people consistently choose rear locations. Is this a religious practice? A cultural tradition?" Admiral Chen looked thoughtful for a moment. Then she smiled again. "It's not religious, Commander. It's just practical." "Practical how?" "Well," she said, "from the back you can see everything that's happening. You can watch all the exits. You can observe how different groups interact. You can respond to problems more effectively because you have a complete view of the situation." HFY felt confused. But front positions offer more prestige, more safety, better access to exits, do they? Admiral Chen asked. "Think about it, Commander. If something goes wrong, where do problems usually start? At the front, where all the important people sit. If enemies attack, what do they target first? The obvious leaders in the obvious places." She took another sip of her coffee. "From the back, you can see threats coming. You can help people who need it. You can coordinate responses without making yourself a target. You have more options, not fewer." HFY stared at her. This was not the answer he had expected. Admiral Chen was describing the back positions not as places for weak creatures to hide, but as tactical advantages for smart creatures to use. "Are you saying humans choose back seats because they are strategically superior?" he asked. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. "I'm saying humans have learned that the best position is not always the most obvious one." That night, HFY lay in his quarters thinking about her words. For the first time, he wondered if the Zephyrians had been wrong about which positions were actually the strongest ones. 3 weeks after his conversation with Admiral Chen, HFY got the chance to see human tactics in action. The Galactic Council sent a mixed group to the Kepler 442 system to investigate reports of strange energy readings. The mission team included Zephyrian warriors, human soldiers, crystalline hegemony scientists, and diplomatic staff from several other species. They traveled aboard the GCS Harmony, a large transport ship designed to carry multiple alien species comfortably. As usual, the Zephyrians claimed the front sections of the passenger area. Their massive frames filled the premium seats near the bridge and main exits. Other species competed for the remaining forward positions, wanting to be close to the important areas of the ship. The humans, predictably, made their way to the rear sections. Admiral Chen chose a seat in the back corner where she could see the entire passenger area. Colonel Webb and his Marines spread out along the back and side walls. They did not seem bothered by the less comfortable seating or the greater distance from the ship's command center. HFY found himself watching the humans more than focusing on the mission briefings. He noticed how they positioned themselves. It was not random. Each human could see multiple exits, had clear lines of sight to different parts of the room, and could move quickly to help other passengers if needed. They acted like they were expecting trouble, but in a calm, prepared way rather than a worried, fearful way. The trouble came sooner than anyone expected. Vraxian pirates had been tracking their ship since it left Council space. The Vraxians were known throughout the galaxy as vicious raiders, who specialized in capturing ships and terrorizing prisoners. They used fear as a weapon, attacking in ways designed to cause maximum panic and confusion. The attack began with a sound that made everyone's blood freeze. Vraxian boarding pods slammed into the ship's hull with tremendous force. The lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the artificial gravity wobbled. Through the main viewports, everyone could see the spider-like shapes of Vraxian assault craft, attaching themselves to the ship like metal parasites. The pirates had done their research. They knew that most species put their strongest warriors and most important leaders in the front sections of ships. So the boarding pods aimed for the forward areas, releasing thick clouds of hallucinogenic gas while armed Vraxians poured through the breached walls. Within seconds, the front of the passenger area turned into chaos. The gas made it hard to think clearly and caused terrifying hallucinations. Even the mighty Zephyrian warriors, with their thick shells and natural resistance to toxins, began stumbling around in confusion. Their strength meant nothing when they could not tell which enemies were real and which were tricks created by the gas. Crystalline hegemony members, whose advanced technology usually gave them major advantages, found their energy weapons useless in the thick fog. The methane breathers sealed their environmental suits, but the gas somehow affected their electronic systems too. Diplomatic staff from various species huddled together, too scared to move. In the front sections where all the important people sat, panic ruled completely. But in the back, something different was happening. The humans had been far enough from the initial breach points to avoid the worst of the gas. More importantly, their rear positions gave them a clear view of what was happening throughout the ship. While other species struggled with confusion and fear, Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos with calm, clear commands. Colonel Webb, defensive positions. Marines established crossfire patterns along the side corridors. Everyone else moved toward the secondary exits. Stay low, stay together, and follow the evacuation lights. Her voice carried an authority that made other species stop panicking and start listening. Even through the noise and confusion, her orders made sense. She could see the whole situation from her position and knew exactly what needed to be done. Colonel Webb and his Marines moved like they had practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times. Instead of charging forward into the gas and confusion where the Vraxians expected resistance, they secured positions along the walls and rear areas. They set up what humans called fields of fire, arranged themselves so their weapons could cover multiple angles and protect the evacuation routes. The Vraxians had prepared for frontal resistance from confused, panicked enemies. They had not prepared for organized, coordinated defense from unexpected positions. Human Marines used their rear positioning to maximum advantage. They could see Vraxian raiders moving through the gas clouds before the pirates could see them. They coordinated their shots to avoid hitting other species. They provided covering fire that allowed Zephyrian, warriors, and other aliens to retreat to safety instead of fighting blindly. In the toxic fog, Thexai found himself being guided toward a secondary exit by a human Marine who seemed to know exactly where every Vraxian was located. The Marine's calm professionalism was completely different from the aggressive bravado Thexai expected from warriors. This human was not trying to prove how tough he was. He was focused entirely on getting everyone out alive. "How can you see them?" Thexai asked as the Marine guided him around a corner, where 3 Vraxian raiders were waiting in ambush. "We've been watching the whole time," the Marine replied, firing precisely at targets Thexai could barely make out through the gas. "From the back, you see everything coming before it reaches you." Admiral Chen coordinated the entire defense without ever leaving her rear position. She used the ship's communication system to direct human Marines, guide other species to safety, and even help the ship's crew regain control of critical systems. Her overview of the situation from the back allowed her to make decisions that saved lives throughout the ship. The most amazing thing was how she organized other species. Instead of taking direct command, which might have hurt alien pride, she made suggestions that sounded like requests. "Commander Thexai, could you help evacuate the wounded near Corridor 7? Your strength would be perfect for moving the injured safely." Somehow her polite request worked better than shouted orders would have. Other species followed her guidance because it made sense, not because they were forced to obey. Within 30 minutes, the Vraxian attack was over. The pirates found themselves facing organized resistance instead of panicked chaos. Human positioning and tactics had turned what should have been an easy raid into a costly failure. The survivors retreated to their ships and fled, leaving their dead behind. As the ship's crew cleared the air and restored normal lighting, HFY looked around in amazement. The front sections were destroyed, filled with wreckage and the bodies of Vraxian raiders. If the most important passengers had stayed in their premium seats, most of them would have been killed or captured, but the back sections, where the humans had positioned everyone, were mostly undamaged. The humans had not only survived the attack but had organized the defense that saved everyone else. Other species began to realize what had happened. The crystalline hegemony science leader approached Admiral Chen with obvious respect. "Your tactical coordination was remarkable, Admiral. How did you maintain such clear command and control during the chaos?" Admiral Chen smiled the same quiet smile HFY had seen before. "We had a good view of the situation from back here. It's easier to make good decisions when you can see everything that's happening." Dr. Kexlar, the Zephyrian scientist, stared at the human admiral with new understanding. "You chose rear positions specifically for tactical advantage. This was not cultural behavior or survival instinct. This was military strategy. Sometimes the best place to lead from is not the front," Admiral Chen replied. "Sometimes you can protect people better from positions that let you see the whole picture." HFY felt like his understanding of warfare had been turned upside down. For his entire military career, he had believed that strength meant taking the most obvious positions of power. The biggest, strongest warriors stood in front where everyone could see their might. But humans had shown him something different. They had demonstrated that smart positioning could be more powerful than raw strength, that seeing everything was more valuable than being seen by everyone. As the ship continued toward Kepler 442, HFY found himself thinking about Admiral Chen's words. Maybe there was more to tactics than he had ever imagined. Maybe the humans had been teaching lessons that no one else had been smart enough to learn. For the first time in his military career, HFY began to wonder if the Zephyrians had been wrong about what real strength looked like. After the Vraxian attack, HFY could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. The humans had not just survived the raid, they had completely changed how it played out. Their choice of rear positions had not been weakness or politeness. It had been brilliant military strategy that none of the other species had recognized. This realization bothered him deeply. If humans were this good at tactics, what else had the Zephyrians missed? What other advantages were hiding in behaviors that seemed weak or strange? HFY decided to study human actions more carefully. He requested access to Galactic Council databases and began reviewing every interaction humans had been part of since joining the Alliance. He looked at diplomatic meetings, emergency responses, joint military exercises, even social gatherings. He wanted to understand if the transport incident was unusual, or if it revealed a pattern. What he found amazed him. In diplomatic meetings, humans always chose seats where they could observe all the other attendees. They rarely sat at the head of tables, preferring positions along the sides or back where they could see everyone's faces and reactions. When negotiations got heated, human diplomats often remained calm while other species argued, watching and listening until they could suggest solutions that worked for everyone. During emergency evacuations, humans consistently positioned themselves near exits but not in front of them. They helped direct traffic flow, assisted injured or confused aliens, and somehow managed to speed up the whole process. Emergency coordinators noted that evacuations went 20% faster when humans were present, even though humans never pushed to the front of evacuation lines. In restaurants and social areas, humans chose tables against walls or in corners, places where they could see multiple entrances and watch all the activity. Other species thought this showed paranoia or antisocial behavior. But when fights broke out or accidents happened, humans were always the first to notice and respond appropriately. The pattern was clear and consistent. Humans preferred positions that gave them maximum awareness and response capability, rather than maximum prestige or apparent safety. HFY dug deeper into human military records. What he discovered challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. Human military history was full of concepts that seemed backward to Zephyrian thinking. Instead of always attacking directly, humans talked about tactical withdrawal and strategic positioning. Instead of putting their strongest fighters in front, they used formations where different soldiers supported each other. From multiple angles, they had developed something called covering fire, where some soldiers positioned themselves to protect others who were moving or completing objectives. They practiced overwatch, where warriors in elevated or rear positions watched for threats and coordinated responses. They used flanking maneuvers to attack enemies from unexpected directions, rather than meeting them head-on. Most puzzling of all, humans seemed to believe that winning a battle was more important than looking brave during it. Their military manuals talked about fighting smart instead of fighting hard. They preferred tactics that achieved objectives with minimum casualties, rather than maximum glory. I arranged to interview Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human military historian, who was visiting the Zephyrian homeworld as part of a cultural exchange program. He met her in the base library, where she had chosen a seat in the back corner with a clear view of all the entrances. Dr. Vasquez, I began, I have been studying human military tactics, and I find them very different from what other species use. Can you help me understand why humans fight the way they do? Dr. Vasquez smiled. What specifically puzzles you, Commander? Everything, Thexai admitted. Your positioning strategies, your preference for indirect approaches, your emphasis on coordination over individual strength. Most species fight by putting their strongest warriors in front and charging toward enemies. Humans seem to do the opposite. That's because humans evolved differently than most species in the galaxy, Dr. Vasquez explained. We were not the strongest predators on our home world. We could not crush enemies with raw power like Zephyrians can. We could not shoot energy beams like the crystalline hegemony. We had to survive by being smarter, not stronger. She gestured toward the library around them. Look at how different species choose seats here. Most pick spots that show their status or keep them close to important resources. Humans pick spots that let them see everything and respond to changes quickly. But why? Thexai asked. If humans are not prey animals, why do you act so defensively? Dr. Vasquez laughed softly. Commander, being defensive is not the same as being weak. Humans learned that the best way to protect yourself and others is to understand your environment completely. We position ourselves where we can see threats coming, help people who need assistance, and respond to problems before they become disasters. She pulled up images on her portable screen showing human military formations. Look at these battle arrangements. Do you see how each position supports the others? No single human warrior has to face all the danger alone. Everyone has backup, everyone has a role, and everyone can see what's happening around them. Thexai studied the diagrams. They were completely different from Zephyrian battle formations, which focused on putting the strongest warriors in front, where they could deal maximum damage to enemies. Human formations looked more like protective nets that could catch problems from any direction. This is very strange thinking, Thexai said. In Zephyrian culture, warriors proved their strength by facing enemies directly. Taking rear positions or using indirect tactics would be seen as cowardly. And how often do Zephyrian battles end with heavy casualties? Dr. Vasquez asked gently. Thexai thought about this. Zephyrian warfare was indeed brutal. Warriors considered dying in battle to be honorable, and survival rates in major conflicts were typically quite low. Strength and courage were more important than staying alive. We accept high casualties as the price of victory, he said. Humans prefer victories where everyone goes home alive, Dr. Vasquez replied. We develop tactics that prioritize mission success and survival over individual glory. Sometimes that means taking positions that look less heroic, but work better for keeping people safe. She showed him more historical examples, human armies that defeated much larger forces by using terrain advantages and positioning. Human naval battles won through coordination, rather than having the biggest ships. Human conflicts resolved through tactical intelligence rather than overwhelming firepower. The key insight, Dr. Vasquez continued, is that the most effective position is not always the most obvious one. Sometimes you can accomplish more from a place where you can see everything than from a place where everyone can see you. Thexai began to understand. So when humans choose rear positions in ships or meetings, you are not being submissive. You are being tactical. Exactly. We're positioning ourselves where we can be most helpful if something goes wrong. where we can coordinate responses, assist others, and maintain awareness of the complete situation. But other species see this as weakness or lack of ambition. Dr. Vasquez nodded, and that misunderstanding can be useful sometimes. If enemies or competitors underestimate you because of where you sit, they might not prepare properly for what you can actually do. This conversation changed how HFY saw everything about human behavior. He began to notice details he had missed before. How humans in mixed groups seemed to naturally facilitate communication between species who had trouble understanding each other. How human-led projects had lower accident rates and higher success percentages. How humans often knew about problems before they became obvious to everyone else. He also started to understand why other species found humans so easy to work with. Humans did not compete for status or try to dominate social situations. Instead, they focused on making sure things went smoothly for everyone. This made other aliens comfortable around humans, which gave humans influence and information that more aggressive species could never gain. The humans had been playing a completely different game than everyone else. While other species fought for obvious positions of power, humans had been quietly taking positions of actual effectiveness. While others focused on looking strong, humans focused on being helpful. And somehow, this approach was working incredibly well for them. HFY realized that the galaxy had seriously underestimated human capabilities. Not just their fighting skills, but their understanding of how groups and conflicts actually worked. Humans had developed a form of intelligence that was almost invisible, until you knew how to look for it. He wondered what would happen if the galaxy ever faced a threat that could not be defeated through traditional displays of strength. What if they encountered enemies who were prepared for the obvious tactics that most species used? Would humanity's hidden advantages become the key to everyone's survival? HFY's question about threats that could not be defeated through traditional strength was answered 6 months later, in the worst possible way. The Devourers came from the dark space between galaxies, where no living thing was supposed to exist. They were not biological creatures, but mechanical entities that had consumed entire civilizations across multiple galaxies. Unlike every other species the Galactic Council had encountered, the Devourers did not want territory, resources, or political power. They simply wanted to eliminate all organic life and add its technology to their collective intelligence. The first warning came from monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge. Long-range sensors detected massive objects moving through space at incredible speeds. The objects were too large to be natural and too organized to be debris. Within hours, it became clear that a vast mechanical fleet was approaching inhabited star systems. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from every major species gathered to discuss the threat and plan their response. As usual, the meeting followed predictable patterns. The strongest species demanded front positions in the council chamber. Zephyrian representatives took seats near the speaker's platform to show their military might. The crystalline hegemony displayed their advanced technology prominently. Other powerful species arranged themselves to demonstrate their importance and readiness to lead the defense. Human representatives quietly took seats in the back rows, just as they always did. The first contact with the Devourers was a disaster that taught the galaxy exactly what they were facing. A joint fleet led by the Altarian Empire, known for their massive battleships and aggressive tactics, moved to intercept the mechanical invaders. The Altarians positioned their most powerful vessels in standard formation, strongest ships in front, command vessels in the center, support craft in the rear. The Devourers destroyed the entire fleet in 17 minutes. The mechanical entities had studied galactic military patterns for decades before beginning their invasion. They knew exactly which ships would be the most dangerous, which vessels carried the most important commanders, and how different species arranged their forces. They targeted the obvious threats first, eliminating command structures and heavy weapons with surgical precision. The Altarian battle fleet never had a chance to adapt or respond. Their predictable formation and traditional tactics made them easy targets for enemies who had analyzed thousands of similar engagements. News of the defeat sent shockwaves through the galaxy. If the Altarians, with their enormous military power, could be wiped out so quickly, what hope did other species have? The crystalline hegemony tried next. Using their advanced energy weapons and superior technology, they lasted 23 minutes before their fleet was completely destroyed. The Zephyrians, confident in their physical strength and warrior traditions, mounted a massive assault with their most elite forces. The battle lasted 8 minutes. Each defeat followed the same pattern. The Devourers had analyzed how different species fought and developed specific countermeasures for every traditional tactic. They knew where command ships would be positioned, how different formations would respond to attacks, and what each species considered to be their greatest strengths. After 6 major defeats and the loss of millions of lives, the Galactic Council was desperate. Every conventional military approach had failed completely. The strongest species in the galaxy were helpless against enemies who could predict and counter their every move. That was when Admiral Chen requested permission to address the Emergency Council session. "Honored representatives," she said from her usual position in the back of the chamber. "The human military has been studying the Devourer attacks, and we believe we understand why our conventional tactics are failing. What could humans possibly know that the rest of us have missed?" demanded General Vextar of the Zephyrian High Command. "Our strongest fleets have been destroyed. What can your small ships accomplish where our mighty warriors have failed?" Admiral Chen remained calm and respectful. "General, the problem is not the strength of our ships or the courage of our warriors. The problem is that the Devourers have been watching us for a long time. They know exactly how we fight because we always fight the same way." She activated a holographic display showing the recent battles. "Look at these fleet arrangements. Every species puts their strongest ships in front, their command vessels in predictable locations, and their support craft in standard positions. The Devourers can target our most important assets immediately because they know exactly where to find them." "So what do you suggest?" asked the Crystalline Hegemony's High Coordinator. "That we hide our strength? Place our weakest ships in front?" "I suggest we implement what humans call Protocol Shepherd," Admiral Chen replied. "A tactical approach designed for situations where traditional methods have failed." She explained the protocol to the stunned council. Instead of leading with their strongest forces, each species would position their most powerful ships in rear positions, where they could coordinate responses and adapt to enemy tactics. Command vessels would be hidden among support craft rather than placed in obvious locations. Fleet formations would change constantly, making it impossible for enemies to predict target priorities. Most shocking of all, human ships would take overall coordination responsibilities, not because they were the strongest, but because their rear positioning and tactical philosophy made them best suited for managing complex, multi-species operations. The council chamber erupted in protests. The idea of the galaxy's strongest species taking secondary positions while humans coordinated from the back violated every military tradition. It seemed like cowardice and abandonment of proper military hierarchy. But with their fleets destroyed and the Devourers advancing toward core worlds, they had no choice but to try something different. The first test of Protocol Shepherd came at the Battle of Rigel 7. Admiral Chen positioned herself aboard an unremarkable human cruiser, hidden among the support vessels of a mixed fleet. Zephyrian battleships, instead of forming the spearhead of the attack, spread out in rear positions where they could respond to developing situations. Crystalline Hegemony energy platforms, rather than taking obvious firing positions, concealed themselves among civilian evacuation ships. When the Devourers arrived, they found something they had never encountered before, a fleet formation that made no sense according to their analysis of galactic military patterns. The mechanical entities targeted what appeared to be the strongest ships, only to discover they were attacking heavily armored but lightly armed decoys. They moved to eliminate obvious command vessels, but found that fleet coordination was coming from sources they could not identify. They attempted to use their standard countermeasures against each species' typical tactics, but those tactics were not being used. For the first time since the invasion began, a galactic fleet survived initial contact with the Devourers. Admiral Chen's voice came from her concealed position, coordinating the response with calm precision. Zephyrian forces moved to Grid 77 and engaged targets designated by human spotters. Crystalline platforms wait for optimal firing solutions and use overlapping fields of fire. All ships maintain flexible positioning and prepare for tactical withdrawal if necessary. The battle lasted 4 hours instead of minutes. The Devourers found themselves fighting an enemy that would not stay still, would not follow predictable patterns, and would not expose important targets for easy elimination. Human coordination from rear positions allowed the fleet to adapt constantly. changing tactics faster than the mechanical entities could analyze and counter them. When the Devourers finally retreated, the galaxy had achieved its first victory against the mechanical invasion. The success at Rigel 7 proved that Protocol Shepard worked, but it also revealed something that made many species uncomfortable. The humans had not just suggested a new tactic, they had demonstrated a completely different understanding of warfare. Their approach prioritized survival and adaptation over glory and tradition. More importantly, human coordination from rear positions had been more effective than traditional command structures, where leaders positioned themselves prominently. Admiral Chen had directed the entire battle while remaining virtually invisible to the enemy, and this invisibility had been a crucial advantage. As news of the victory spread, Thex High realized that everything he thought he knew about military leadership had been wrong. The strongest position was not always the most visible one. The best leaders were not always the ones standing in front giving obvious orders. Sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was to position yourself where you could see everything, help everyone, and respond to whatever came next. The humans had been teaching this lesson for years, but no one had been smart enough to learn it until the galaxy's survival depended on understanding what human tactics really meant. The war against the Devourers lasted 3 brutal years, but those 3 years changed the galaxy forever. What began as a desperate attempt to survive became a complete transformation of how civilized species understood warfare, cooperation, and leadership. Admiral Chen's Protocol Shepard proved effective in battle after battle, but it required every species to abandon their traditional ideas about strength and honor. Zephyrian warriors had to learn that protecting the fleet from rear positions was more valuable than charging heroically toward the enemy. Crystalline hegemony commanders had to accept that concealing their advanced weapons was more important than displaying their technological superiority. Hardest of all, every species had to trust human coordination, even when they could not see or understand the complete tactical picture. The breakthrough came during the Battle of Proxima Centauri, where Admiral Chen demonstrated the full potential of human tactical thinking. The Devourers had adapted to some aspects of Protocol Shepard and were beginning to counter the new tactics. They had learned to look for hidden command ships and adapted their targeting to account for non-traditional fleet formations. Admiral Chen realized that winning this war would require something even more radical than unconventional positioning. It would require tactics so unexpected that no computer could predict them. She positioned the human fleet not just in rear positions, but behind asteroids, gas giants, and space debris fields. Instead of creating formations that made military sense, she spread human ships across a 3-dimensional battlefield where traditional ideas about front and rear positions became meaningless. When the Devourer fleet arrived at Proxima Centauri, they found what appeared to be a completely disorganized collection of ships scattered randomly throughout the system. There were no obvious battle lines, no clear command structures, and no predictable patterns to analyze. The Devourers began their standard approach, targeting the largest and most threatening vessels first. But every time they destroyed what looked like an important ship, they discovered it was either a decoy or a relatively unimportant support vessel. The real threats remained hidden among civilian transports, mining equipment, and scientific research stations. Admiral Chen coordinated the defense from a position that would have horrified traditional military leaders. Her command ship was disguised as a damaged civilian freighter, positioned behind a gas giant where it could not be seen by enemy sensors. She directed the entire battle through a network of communications relays that made it impossible for the Devourers to locate the source of fleet coordination. From this invisible position, she orchestrated something that had never been attempted in galactic warfare, a battle plan that changed completely every few minutes. All ships, Pattern 7, her voice announced calmly across the communication network. Zephyrian groups move to intercept Formation Delta. Crystalline platforms prepare for firing solution Omega-3. Minutes later, switch to Pattern 12. All vessels, new positions transmitting now. Methane breathers. Deploy interference clouds at coordinates I'm sending. The Devourers found themselves fighting an enemy that reinvented itself constantly. Every time their computer systems analyzed the tactical situation and prepared countermeasures, the human-coordinated fleet had already changed to something completely different. Even more confusing for the mechanical entities, Human tactics seemed to violate basic principles of efficient warfare. Ships would retreat when they had advantages, attack when they appeared to be losing, and coordinate in ways that looked random but somehow achieved precise results. HFY, commanding a Zephyrian battle group from what felt like a very unheroic position hidden behind a mining station, began to understand what Admiral Chen was really doing. She was not just using unconventional tactics, she was making warfare itself unpredictable. Commander HFY, Admiral Chen's voice came through his communication system. I need your group to fall back toward the fourth planet. Make it look like you're retreating in disorder. Admiral, my warriors are ready to fight, HFY replied. Why are we running from an enemy we could engage? Because in 30 seconds they're going to chase you directly into the firing solution the crystalline platforms have been preparing. Your retreat will position them perfectly for elimination. HFY followed the orders even though everything in his warrior training told him that retreating was wrong. His battle group fell back in apparent confusion, drawing a formation of devourer ships into pursuit. Moments later, energy beams from concealed crystalline platforms destroyed the pursuing enemies with perfect precision. The tactic worked because it was completely illogical according to traditional military thinking. No reasonable commander would retreat when they could fight. So the Devourer's computer systems did not anticipate the possibility. Throughout the battle, Admiral Chen used human understanding of rear positioning and tactical coordination to create opportunities that no single species could have achieved alone. She positioned different alien groups where their unique strengths would be most effective, coordinated timing so that attacks supported each other perfectly, and maintained awareness of the complete battlefield situation while remaining invisible to enemy targeting. The Battle of Proxima Centauri lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled. For the first time in the war, the mechanical entities retreated not because they needed to regroup, but because they could not understand what they were fighting against. The victory marked the turning point of the war, but it also revealed something that changed how every species in the galaxy thought about leadership and strength. Admiral Chen had directed the most complex military operation in galactic history from a position where no one could see her, using tactics that looked like chaos but achieved perfect results. She had demonstrated that true command did not require standing in front giving obvious orders. Instead, it required understanding how all the pieces fit together and helping everyone else succeed. After the war ended with humanity's tactics proving decisive in battle after battle, the Galactic Council completely restructured its military doctrine. The phrase, taking the rear, became synonymous with tactical wisdom rather than cowardice. Species that had once competed for front positions began to value overview and coordination abilities. HFY often found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this new understanding. 5 years earlier, he had seen human behavior as puzzling weakness. Now he recognized it as sophisticated strength that his species had been too proud to learn from. He remembered the first conversation with Admiral Chen, when she had explained that the best position was not always the most obvious one. At the time, he had thought she was making excuses for human limitations. Now he understood that she had been describing a form of intelligence that went far beyond physical strength or advanced technology. The humans had always known something that other species were just beginning to learn. That real power came not from being the biggest or strongest or most visible, but from understanding how to help everyone else succeed. They had chosen rear positions not because they were weak, but because those positions allowed them to see everything, protect everyone, and coordinate responses that no single species could manage alone. During the final ceremony celebrating the end of the Devourer War, HFY watched Admiral Chen receive honors from representatives of every species in the galaxy. She accepted the recognition gracefully, but he noticed that she had positioned herself not at the center of attention, but slightly to one side where she could observe the entire gathering. Even at her moment of greatest recognition, she maintained the tactical awareness that had saved the galaxy. She was still watching, still ready to respond, still positioned where she could help if anything went wrong. HFY smiled as he realized that Admiral Chen was teaching one final lesson to anyone smart enough to notice. True strength was not something you displayed for others to admire. It was something you used to make sure everyone made it home safely. The humans had always understood this. They had been sitting in the rear not because they were hiding from responsibility, but because they were accepting the greatest responsibility of all, the duty to watch over everyone else. The galaxy's strongest species had finally learned what human positioning really meant, and it had saved them all.